Good afternoon, vinyl community. This is Graham coming to you from Wembley in North London in the UK, where it's very, very sunny. But of course, most people are staying pretty much indoors because of the situation here. So anyway, I thought I'd just do a brief video about three recent albums that I picked up. They're quite interesting. They're quite obscure albums, but let's crack on and I'll tell you about them. So the first one is the Japanese synthesist Asao Tomita. This is live in New York, Back to Earth. I've never actually seen this before. I picked this up for £3 at a sort of a favourite local record shop, which unfortunately is now, of course, closed. Tomita was well known for covering classical pieces in the 70s, Pictures as an Exhibition, which of course Emerson, Lake and Palmer did before him. And then he did an album called Snowflakes Are Dancing, which was the new sound of Debussy. Those were popular albums. This one is interesting. It's mid-80s and it's actually a live album, and it's a performance from New York, actually on the Hudson River. It was a multimedia performance with an orchestra, screens, and Tomita was kind of overseeing but also playing from a pod that was hung, I think it's about 150 feet over the river, and he was kind of conducting and playing. You can just see the pod there over the river, and it sounds like a really interesting setup, enormous sort of multimedia extravaganza in 1986 at Battery Park in Lower Manhattan. There's some Bach on here, three-part invention in C minor. There's some Mahler, there's Richard Strauss, Space Odyssey. There's some Gustav Holst, Debussy, some Chinese traditional music, Gershwin, Holst, The Planets, Jupiter. He also did an album of The Planets, and Wagner. Just a really interesting album, actually, and quite sort of apt at the moment. It has a very kind of world feel to it, kind of, music that sort of transgresses, is just sort of, really great, full sounding album, mainly Moog synth, I think, for Tomita. He used the modular system. Just a good find, very obscure. Never ever seen this before. Had a quick look on Discogs, and it goes for a little bit, not a huge amount, but I think I got that at a very good price. Oh, the other thing, just to show, I'd never seen this RCA label before. So he was on RCA, and this is the RCA Victor, but it's this sort of quite nice white and red banded label in great condition. Okay, what have we got next? So next up we have some German progressive rock from the 70s, Triumvirate, Illusions on a Double Dimple. This album, I think, was the second or third by the band. They were often sort of bracketed as a bit of a poor man's Emerson, Lake and Palmer. The keyboard player, Jürgen Fritz, is fantastic and plays Hammond, Moog synth, electric piano, and Steinway and ground on here. And there's a percussionist, drummer, and then a bass player as well. Some vocals, mainly sort of instrumental, sort of European progressive rock. Good songwriting, two basic tracks on both sides, although they've been subdivided. Illusions on a Double Dimple, which I didn't understand the title until I realized, and after reading an article, it's to do with drinking whiskey. Apparently there's a double dimple whiskey bottle. It's characterized by this double dimple in the glass. And so Triumvirate are talking about illusions on a double dimple because of the whiskey drinking, I think. Anyway, it's a good album, strong album. well recorded. It's got some nice Moog synthesizer solos, which kind of appealed to me. And it's on the Harvest label. They were on Harvest. I'll just show you that. So the classic sort of green Harvest label and in good condition. Enjoyed that. Something a bit different. Last up is an album I got quite a long time ago. Quite an obscure album, and it's a solo album by John Heisman, the drummer from Colosseum and Colosseum 2. Went on to play with Paraphernalia with his wife Barbara Thompson. John Heisman unfortunately passed away, I think, last year. This was recorded in Rio de Janeiro and it's called A Night in the Sun. I was sort of hoping for some sort of prog fusion album, which is very much what he'd been associated with. And in fact, it's a very bouncy Latin flavored album. It was recorded in Rio de Janeiro in 1981. I didn't know any of the names of the other musicians. They are, it looks like, Brazilian musicians. There's lots of saxophone, trombone, trumpet, acoustic guitar. It's an enjoyable album. As I said, I was hoping for a kind of prog, sort of certainly fusion-y album. Heisman's pretty understated. He's playing kind of very Latin-y grooves, which he did sometimes with Paraphernalia. There is a Paraphernalia track called Walking on Air, which is written by Barbara Thompson. It's just a nice album to have. John Heisman there on the back. I like the album cover art as well. And I didn't know the label. So it's quite interesting when you get a label that you've never heard of. This is on the Cook label. I don't know if anything else has been on this. Perhaps anyone can advise. Great condition. I like the label as well. It's really kind of bright. So just a nice album to have. There's no drum solos. I have got a John Heisman album, which is actually called About Time 2, and it's got 4 drum solos on it. Just amazing album, actually. But if you're not into drum solos, don't buy the album. Anyway, that's all for now. Obviously, to everyone watching across the world, stay safe. Really difficult situation at the moment. And yeah, just be well.